joining us for the Winter Web App webinar today. Today's topic is the Winter Web App is a magical solution to an age-old problem, and you will soon see why. Quick reality check. We know that most municipalities have really good snow operation practices in place already, but our research shows that very few municipalities actually maintain an annual winter maintenance plan. It's a fraction of the overall municipalities in North America. And some of the reasons why they're unable to maintain a plan every year, here are some of the reasons. One of the things we hear is that it's a time-consuming process. The other one we hear about is municipalities aren't sure of how much documentation annually is enough. Then also there's the issue of having not enough resources and having to already do more with less. Another thing, and writing a document is not something that you really get thanked a lot, but when municipality has to perhaps defend its case in the court, then all this documentation is no longer a thankless effort, then that is really the savior. But still, we understand that the fact that people think that creating a document is a thankless effort. And one thing that we hear a lot is that it's all right up in here in the head. And a lot of municipalities have been operating and delivering good services to their citizens, but a number of them don't really have anything written down. It's all in the public works directors or the CAO or the person in charge. It's all, the entire operation is in their head. So the operation for the municipality is only as good until that person is there. So if that person is no longer there for whatever reason, the whole level of service for that municipality can diminish very quickly. So it's not just a problem for the team that's working on the winter operations at the municipality, but it's not a sustainable thing to do as a whole. It's something that has very long-lasting implications, and they go beyond the people who are involved in the operations. So, of course, it is bad for the municipality not to have a plan in place. And the consequence, a direct consequence of not having a plan in place is that you're almost always playing defense. So as the snow happens or the storm comes, it's always a reactionary effort as opposed to a pre-planned effort as best as possible. And of course, since it's a reactionary effort, then the staff delegation issues come to the table, and also how do you budget for something that you've never planned for before. In the larger scheme of things, you have the issue of succession planning, that if the delegations and duties aren't properly written down and communicated to the entire team, it's difficult to carry out succession planning when that time comes. So all in all, there are way too many implications to list. But let's have a look at how the municipalities who do create winter maintenance plans, how do they do it? So to create a plan, basically the public works personnel get together and they spend about 3 to 4 weeks of their time. And at the end, you have a winter maintenance plan that's a good fit for the municipality that's creating it. But then because of the effort that's required, it's not unheard of that it takes 5 or so years or even longer, seem to be typical for the plan to be overhauled again, because within that time, stuff changes, and after 5 years, it just looks like the plan is no longer relevant as people have moved forward. The plow routes have changed, the material has changed, and so on and so forth. The other option, let's call it option B, is the hiring of a consultant. So public works personnel hire a consultant. The consultant does the job in understanding what the operations look like for the municipality, goes back to their office, and they do about 6 to 8 weeks worth of work, because now they have to understand what kind of operations you operate and then in turn create a document. So it takes longer than if you were to create one yourself. That effort leads into a winter maintenance plan. Of course, that is a good and high quality plan that the municipality can use. But then again, because of the time and effort and the money required to carry out this particular option of hiring a consultant to do the plan, it's again not unheard of that you have again that 5-year cycle where nothing is updated in between, and it's only after 5 years that the plan goes almost not usable in many aspects, and it has to be redone again. But in the meanwhile, there's nothing, no updates, or very few updates. So when we looked at the way that municipalities are creating plans, like we looked at option A and B, we asked ourselves, how can we make this process a whole lot better? So we began with the most typical option that most municipalities undertake, which is option A, which is the in-house effort. And we definitely feel that the public works personnel need to be involved in this process. as it relates to their day-to-day operations. And of course, we are after the creation of the winter maintenance plan, which has tremendous benefits. So of course, we cannot get rid of that. So we need those two things. However, the fact that it takes a minimum of 3 to 4 weeks, that's something that we felt needed to be overhauled. Also, the fact that it takes 5 years before the plan is renewed again is something that we feel that we can contribute something towards and make it more often than 5 years. And while we were at it, we figured we should try to minimize the number of effort required by the municipality. So this is where the Winter Web app came into play. And we developed, let's call it option A plus, where only a single public works person, not multiple. We suggest that this is the public works director because that's the kind of a person who would know the entire set of operations that a municipality undertakes for winter. So that one person spends about 4 to 5 days, and this is days, not weeks. And at the end of that, you have a very high quality winter maintenance plan. And in the following year, all you do is basically spend a few minutes updating the things that changed. So you might have staff that might have moved around, reps might have moved around, you might have purchased new equipment, you might be trying new material, etc. But it doesn't take that long, only takes a few minutes. And that's how you have a plan that's updated every single year. And that's the way the Winter Web app works. So how we began the Winter Web app was that we consulted with public works personnel from Canada and the US. And what we ended up with was a very comprehensive template of everything that you can think of in relation to winter operations. So this would cover about 95 to 98% of everything that most municipalities undertake. Here are some of the topics that become part of the template. So you have the pre-winter, you have the facilities and staff, you have the weather monitoring details and protocols, salt management, and any other material management for that matter, equipment listing, material listing, level of service policies, winter maintenance, vulnerable areas, general operations of your municipality and your public works, disposal and decommissioning of snow, and of course it also includes the route maps for the plow routes. And if you do winter patrol to have an eye on the road, then there's the opportunity to do that as well. And there's just tons of more stuff. So what we identified was that between municipalities, a lot of operations are very, very similar. There are things that differ between municipalities, but they can be easily identified. And that's how we created blanks within our template, and that's where municipalities can enter their data. And we created the Winter Web app that works like TurboTax on steroids. And as you may know, TurboTax is the popular annual personal taxing software where you simply answer questions and you put in numbers for your salary and your dollar operating costs, etc. And then the system basically files the taxes for you. Similarly, what happens is that the public works person, once you're signed on as a subscriber to the Winter Web app, you basically come in, we pose a few questions in relation to the winter operations, and as you're asking those questions, the system is automatically filling out the winter maintenance plan for you. And the same way, if another public works person comes in with their own login and ID, they answer their questions their way, and the Winter Web app updates the winter maintenance plan for them in their own way. So very, very, very customized. And at the end, all users have a fully customized print-ready PDF that is ready to go to council. So we wanted to make sure that the process of filling out the questions is very, very easy. So simply, this is how it happens, easy as 1, 2, 3. You log in securely with your user ID and password into the Winter Web app. Then you go ahead and answer the straightforward questions and you create your route maps and any other maps. And then finally, you have a customized winter operations plan that's ready for download as a PDF file. So something that would take months to create can now be done in less than a week. So just want to show you a few screens of how this whole thing works. You always begin with your current season. So in this case, the sample is 2015-2016 season. And there are only 3 steps to the process. Step 1 is that you edit the content, so you answer the questions basically. Step 2 is that you download the PDF once you have achieved 100% completion of the questions. And then finally, once you're ready to move on to the next season, you just click the finalize button, the third one down, and that takes all the information that you have presently puts it into the next year's system and save your current copy as a previous winter document so you can reference it back whenever you need. So let's look at how you re-edit the document. Now, the winter operations plan is not a small task. And if you can imagine, this is several months worth of winter operations that you have to put together into a plan. So it's a giant elephant. And how do you eat a giant elephant? One bite at a time. And that's exactly what we've done. So we've taken entire set of winter maintenance plan into 16 categories. So you have your contact information, road network and maps, level of service, winter activities, material, facilities, vulnerable areas, staff, equipment, weather monitoring, communication, disposal and decommissioning, training, plan improvements, records, and any additional documents and texts. And we call these sections as modules. And what basically happens is, let's say you click on module A, which is contact information. You first of all see an important notice, and it says you will need the following information in order to complete this module. So we want to give you a heads up of what's coming. So in this case, it's a simple contact information module. So all you have to know is municipalities' contact information, land area, tier, and population, knowledge of your municipal boundary, your municipality's logo, your contact information, your contractor's contact information, if that's applicable, and the supervisor's contact information. So if you have that information in place, then all you do is click on I'm ready, and that takes you into the question queue. And basically the question is at the top, and the answers that you provide are just underneath. The first question is, please enter the below information about your organization. And in this case, we're asking for your municipality name, the type of organization you are, whether city, town, village, etc., then the structural level of your organization, then the estimated population and the year of census, the total area, the tier that you are, the web address, simple things like that. So much of these are basically text boxes and one-liners sort of thing, and those have been designed that way very intentionally. And the primary reason for that is just to reduce any pressure on the person filling out the form as much as possible. So our intention is not for you to write novels and novels of text, but only to answer straightforward questions, and the system does the writing for you. Also at the bottom, you notice there are dots in the bottom center of the screen. That basically shows you that you're on page 1 of page 7. So there's 7 dots at the bottom. Once you've answered the questions on page 1, you simply click on the green arrow at the bottom right. You go to the next question, and the next question is organization's mailing address. So this one is straightforward again. You filled information out, and note that there are orange bars at the left of some of the text boxes. These are mandatory questions, and if those are not answered, or even a single one is left unanswered, the module will be considered incomplete. So you continue on with the questions that way by pressing the arrow at the bottom right. The kind of questions basically you can expect in all these are simple text box types of questions, multiple choice check boxes, yes and no type, and very rarely do we ask for an open-ended question that requires like a paragraph of text. And that typically happens when you're talking about level of service, because that is where you need to define the attributes a little detail. And once you've answered everything for the module, you get a check mark that says your information has been saved. Press OK, and then you go back to the module screen. So once you've done one of the modules, even the format of the modules is exactly the same. So you begin with a list of things that you will require in order to answer the questions that are upcoming. So it just gives you a heads up. Once you have that information handy, then you go in and you answer the questions. And once you've answered the questions, you get a check mark saying that your information has been saved. So once you've done one module, you've learned how every single module works. So one of the neat things about the Winter Web App is that all the information related to your winter maintenance is very, very simple, and it's all in one place. So for instance, one of the challenges that municipalities have is how to deal with year-over-year equipment use or staff changes or level of service, material use, and lots more. So there's lots happening within the municipality while the operation is ongoing. So how do you track all that information? I'll give you an example of how the material is tracked as part of the Winter Web App. So you'll go simply into Module E, which is Materials, and the question reads, please add the solid material you plan to use during this winter season and how much. So you click on the green solid button and you get a pop-up, and I'm just zooming in a little bit more so you can see easily. So we've already selected that it's a solid material. Now you get to select the type of solid material it is. So we've already pre-populated with the most used material, but if you want to add your own, you can certainly do that. Once you do that, then the next question is, what is the expected total quantity this season and what was the actual total quantity last season? So that gives you a little bit of a check year over year on how much material is changing in this case. The next question is, does the primary material come pre-mixed with other materials? So as the delivery is coming to you, the supplier may have already mixed a certain percent of another material within it. If you're not sure, then you don't have to worry about this. But let's say that you say yes to that question, then you will have to identify what material is mixed and what type it is and what percent is mixed. We only pose the question to you as needed. We don't overwhelm with the questions. It's only after the user pressed yes, and that's why the following question was raised. And then the other question just before this is that, does your organization mix other materials in-house? So you might have a straight material or maybe straight salt coming from the supplier, and you might be mixing it with something else. Now, if you say not sure, then of course you don't have to worry about it. And if you said yes, then similar to the previous question, you'll have to identify what you mix it with. So a very easy way to track all your materials. And once you have completed that particular material, you just press submit and your information is saved. And basically documenting everything else, so you have your staff, your equipment, your facilities, it's just as easy. So you simply go through a series of questions about those particular things and the system tracks it for you. Now, another neat thing is that the Winter Web App comes with the ability to create your plow routes and different sorts of route maps that you may want to include in your document. So this gives you full control of how your maps are. We also went out of our way to make it super easy to create and update your maps. So in one of the modules, in module B, the question reads here, please review or update your road categories, and we suggest a maximum of 6. So here we have one of the users as identified the categories as primary, secondary, local, and alley. And then you have the ability to give it different priorities, and also you can choose the colors that you like for each of the categories. Once you've done that, you get into the actual mapping, and let's say they were trying to create a plow route. As you try to create a route, the first thing it says is that you have to give it a name, of course, and then you can select whether it's a roadway route or a sidewalk route. We're going to show you what the roadway route looks like. So you get a giant screen of mapping, Google Maps running in the back, so you have high quality and up-to-date data right at your fingertips. And then at the top, we have created our own toolbar that lets you create the route maps. We wanted to make sure that it's very, very simple, and there's no tool in here that you do not need. Basically what you do is that you click on the new line and you click on one point, and as you click on the other point, the line basically draws itself. So it follows through the contours and the geometry of the road behind, so you don't have to worry about doing curves and anything like that. The system basically does that for you. And also, as the line is being drawn, the system also keeps track of how many lane miles you have drawn. So here you have 3.25 miles. This is the treatment. So this is where the material is being put down. And the system is sensitive enough to keep track of the number of lanes. So if you change the number of lanes to 4, let's say, the calculation at the bottom will change automatically. Now, the other thing we've done is there are times when you're not putting material down and simply traveling or deadheading from one place to another. So in that case, you just simply turn on the travel only option. And when you now draw the line, it draws it as a dashed line. And that gives you a visual distinction between the places where you're putting the material down or treating the road versus just traveling. And not only that, but the system tracks the travel separately. So you have 1.53 miles of traveling and then 12.98 lane miles of the actual material treatment. So very, very simple. And once you've done that, you click on submit and you get a pop-up that says that your map was successfully saved. So very simple, and you can customize the map as you like. We allow you to create plow routes, also patrol routes, and your land boundary, and also any salt vulnerable area that you may have in your jurisdiction. So basically all the different types of maps that you need to include as part of your winter maintenance plan. Now, if you haven't answered all the mandatory questions for the module, like we saw earlier, so those were the questions that had the orange bar at the left-hand side. So if you haven't answered them, then the module itself will be incomplete. But the great thing is that you can answer the questions for each of the modules at your own pace. So if you can only expand about half an hour a day, then that's fine. Then you do what you can answering the questions for the modules of your choice. We suggest that you go through the modules one after the other, so you go in sequence as opposed to just picking out different modules. As long as you can pace yourself and answer all the questions for all the modules and get greens for each of them, you're good to go. Once you've answered all the questions, you're going to see that the plan will start to say 100%, and this is an automatic calculation based on how many modules are complete. So you have 100% of the modules now complete. Now all you do is click on download, and your winter maintenance plan is created on the fly for you. Your municipality's logo will appear on the front page with your municipality's name. And here's a quick look at the table of contents. So very, very comprehensive. Ultimately, the document usually ends up being between at least 50 pages, and we've seen over 130 pages worth of document already. And the person didn't even have to write a single line for in front of, let's say, Microsoft Word or any desktop publishing software. Everything is done by the system automatically, simply based on the feedback that you provide to the questions in the modules. Now, one of the great things about the Winter Web App is that it gives you value, not just now, but over time. So you have, this is one of the graphs that actually looks good going down, and what this is showing is that the time required for you to answer questions goes down significantly from the first year to the next and the following. So initially, of course, you're answering all the questions that were never answered before. So it takes a little bit of time. That's where the less than a week issue comes in. And then after that, all you're doing is basically spending a few minutes here and there just to change the things that did change from the past season to this season. So let's say that you're sitting at the end of the season and you want to be able to go to, let's say, the winter maintenance plan for the 2017-2018. All you do is click on finalize, and the system automatically takes all the data that you have and pushes it down to the previous winter documents, and then updates the current season to 2017-2018. So everything that you have existing goes to the previous document, and 100% of your data has been moved on to this year's. So all you then need to do is go back to edit and then change the things, and then there you can download after the updated plan for the next season as well. Now, as part of the Winter Web App, it's great that you now have a plan in place, but the way that we've designed the Winter Web App is that we want to be able to give you the opportunity to use your data in more ways than just creating the winter maintenance plan. And what we mean by that is, so you have, let's say, your maps, material, equipment, facilities, staff, and more data that comes together as you provide it, and it creates a winter maintenance plan as a PDF file. Now, what we also do is that we have been introducing add-ons. And what they do is basically take some or all of that same data and give you more value. So let's say you have your material, equipment, staff, and a bit more. That same information can be used to track your storm event through the events tracking add-on. And this has been baked into the Winter Web App subscription. So when you get the Winter Web App subscription, you get to not only create your winter maintenance plan, but you can also track your storms throughout the year. It's very, very easy to track your storms through the Winter Web App. Basically, it's the second add-on that appears on your home screen in the Winter Web App, and as the name suggests, it lets you track your storm events, start and end times, the operation durations, the equipment that was involved, the staff involved, material used, and tons more. So basically, if you've been tracking that through paper, then this is your way to go digital. And if you haven't been tracking it, then this is the perfect opportunity to start tracking your storms. So here's a quick list of all the storms that we tracked, and this is just a table showing the start and end times and the material that was used, but there's a lot more that goes in each one. We're not going to the details of that. But the neat thing that we also included here is a visual of the storms. So here you have 3 different colors showing. Light gray shows the duration of the storm. Top and bottom, you have the dates showing. The dark gray is the duration of the operations. You can see the operations started just a little bit before the storm and went just a little bit after the storm. And then for the following storm, similarly, they started in advance and then cleaned up and finished up after. And then also the blue shows you this accumulation. For every single storm, you'll have the opportunity to add how much snow accumulation you've had. And one of the neat things is that it keeps track of the highest accumulation you've had ever. So you can see a visual difference in how much the extreme was at one point and how does that compare to the existing storm. So basically, Winter Web App is not just a tool that lets you create your winter maintenance plan, but it's really an ecosystem with endless possibilities. So here's what Benjamin Dow, Director of Operations of the City of Fargo, had to say about the Winter Web App. He's one of our users, and he says that the Winter Web App provides the City of Fargo a user-friendly program that allows our winter maintenance plan to be a living document that can be effortlessly updated at any time without having to recreate the wheel. Also, Chris Craney, county engineer from the County of Middlesex, says, the Winter Web App has helped Middlesex by allowing us to minimize staff time and reduce our costs with preparing and maintaining our winter maintenance plan and greatly improving our ability to defend our municipality against winter-related road incident claims. So now if you look back at the screen that we looked at earlier in the presentation, where there are definitely long-lasting implications in case that there is no winter maintenance plan. The good thing is that through the Winter Web App, you can convert those implications into legacy and create a long-lasting legacy for yourself and your municipality by having a plan in place. And doing a detailed plan every single year lets you plan ahead and not just play defense. Then also, as you're planning ahead, your staff roles become clear and much more defined than before. And then as all those things come together, your staff, your equipment, your facilities, material, as you're planning all of that, you are able to have much better controls on your budget. And of course, in the longer scheme of things, as you are planning the entire thing ahead, it sets you up very positively for a documented succession planning. And just in general, I suppose there's way too many positives to list if you do have a winter maintenance plan in place. So whether you do it through the Winter Web App or you decide to create one yourself and maintain it every single year, there's just a tremendous amount of benefits. So if you look at it from the perspective of the fact that there's only one public works person that's needed to create the winter maintenance plan, or from the fact that it only takes about less than a week to create your winter maintenance plan as opposed to several weeks and months, and the fact that the document itself is very content-rich and covers basically everything that you do for your municipality during winter operations, and the fact that the cost is very, very affordable, we think that the Winter Web App is just the right choice. All of that combined together gives you a very magical solution that does not exist elsewhere in the world. So that's all I had for you today. I want to thank you for taking the time to sit with us. And if you have any questions, you can send it to us at helpdesk@ograpps.com. And if you want to visit the website for more details at www.ograpps.com. And thank you once again. My name is Fahad Shuja, and I am the project architect for the Winter Web App.